welcome to Leadership Luminaries Lounge with Kerry Bass and Peggy O'Neill, a podcast about the connection of leadership, philosophy, practice, and impact on society. Get ready to be illuminated.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Luminaries Lounge. I'm Kerry Bass,
Peggy O'Neill.
Oh, yeah, Peggy, my co-host.
Yeah.
And why don't we tell what we also do in our other business world too? My company is Potential to Reality Consulting, and I am a strategy and management consultant. Peggy, what are your?
Yeah, so I'm an executive coach and business consultant. So I work with executives, leaders, high-level professionals that are committed to a culture of success, a culture of people being committed to each other and doing well together. That's the kind of work I do: leadership, management, coaching, training, around all that.
That's great. Well, for those of you that had looked at the introduction to this podcast, you may remember that Peggy and I had met actually in a publicity course. And so we started having some really interesting conversations on a regular basis. And we agreed that we were going to meet regularly and start sharing our thoughts and our ideas and having a conversation on topical areas. And it seemed to gravitate toward leadership. And we said, we ought to share these conversations with other folks. And so we came up with the idea of the Leadership Luminaries Lounge. And so not only because, while Peggy is a wonderful co-host, but I'm pretty smart myself too.
You are, Kerry.
Thank you.
You're very smart.
But, we think that there's probably some other folks that could share some things and insights that might be beneficial to others that would want to listen to our podcast. And so we started inviting other folks as our featured guest of podcasts. And we've been at this for a year now. It has been an interesting year.
Yeah, we've had some wonderful people, wonderful conversations.
Absolutely. And some of the topics that we have covered are just been really interesting. In particular, well, all of them actually are pretty interesting. And you can go back to our podcast channel on YouTube, Leadership Luminaries Lounge podcast on YouTube, and you can get a full listing of all of the topics and all of the recordings that we have done over this past year. And one of the things, though, that kind of sticks out in my mind is that some of the topics that we've covered are really areas of interest that are dealing with significant areas of change. One of them, we had a very interesting discussion with a kind of a panel discussion with a couple of experts on artificial intelligence and generative AI and the impact that has on business and how do leaders deal with that, both the good and the bad. Peggy, did you have any other thoughts or comments that you remember about that?
And again, I know this is of interest to both of us, our corporate culture, our business culture, and they also spoke to, what's the impact on the culture of the organization, the people in the organization, and how do they lead knowing that is happening, and what do they bring into their leadership to account for that. So that was a good part of the AI discussion too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and culture really is one of the cliches that that we've shared, I'm sure somewhere, is that culture trumps strategy all day long. But and culture really is a grounding responsibility of leadership. The leaders set the culture of the organization, and they're the ones, and their culture and their integrity is what drives the organization forward.
Exactly.
And so we have had several conversations around culture, and almost every conversation that we have always deals with the integrity of the leader. One of the ones that was most memorable is we had one of my colleagues come on and talk about faith in leadership, and he shared his personal faith, how it guides him, and that is a matter of personal integrity, and that's what leads him in his business culture, and how that is shared and permeated throughout his organization. And ultimately, that's kind of what we found out that works when just about every organization is what the leadership believes and what they have committed themselves to is really what's going to be expressed in the nature of the organization.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we've had a couple of conversations around that. And we've also talked about a number of tools that leaders can use to be able to. One of your conversations you remember we had too was some very specific tools on podcasting about
Yeah,
how
that was so good. I really enjoyed that. We learned a lot. And so
we
if
did.
you haven't seen that podcast, I really encourage you to, and how important it is for leaders to be thinking about those sorts of ways to relate to people, whether it's their customers, again, the people that they work with, the culture, the difference that can make. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to think more, and some of those technical pieces too that we
Oh,
got
yeah.
the advice there too, like about the lighting,
Mhm.
and one of the things I didn't realize too at the time, and he was telling me about the clothes that you wear, that you really had to have more of a pastel approach instead of these patterns, because the patterns almost have like a zodiac effect
Uh-huh.
on the camera. And I was thinking about that I was wearing zodiac shirts or whatever, so
Oh, really?
early on in the podcast.
Yeah.
And and that led us also into some of the other thoughts too. And as we got further along, we started actually getting more, I like to think more, I don't want to call it professional, because that's really not our intent. But we got more serious about the look and feel of our podcast, and we actually changed the background, and so in our look. And so I think it's still growing on you. I'm not sure that you actually have bought into this latest background yet. So
Yeah, I have decided to totally embrace it, love it, be with what is. So,
and now, and boy, won't you love it if I change again next year, so this upcoming season, we changed our background again. And then, and so it's going to be another year of change.
yeah.
And that brings up another topic. 2024 was a very, very interesting year.
Mhm.
And it brought up a lot of interesting challenges. Many here in the United States, there was a lot of angst and discussion around the elections. And, some of us, particularly Peggy, has done work there to help deal with the challenges to democracy that many felt. And what we saw around the world is that democracies around the globe have really been under challenge of whether or not they're providing the value that the citizens of those democracies are expecting. And so it's been some interesting challenges along the way, and we've had some discussions around it. And one of the things that, and Peggy, you've done some specific work on, but we've also brought up a couple of leaders on to talk about, is this division of the citizenry and the pulling apart of our societies, and how leaders of organizations can start dealing with, how do we start dealing with a reunification of our societies? And you've done some work in that area too.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we had a Saul Erdman, who was one of
Yeah.
our speakers. Of course, he's talking more about how to help citizen the everyday citizen come together. So he has a beautiful project around that. And then as far as bringing in the working within the organizations, that it's focusing on just supporting people and communicating, and not necessarily about anything political, which is different from democracy. It's something I've been really learning and integrating, but but to just help people within the organization be better at getting along and communicating. And then that will filter out into how they are in the political realm or other areas that are related to democracy. So that's how I heard it. What else did you hear about?
No,
how
I
people are-
agree with that, and we'll come back to that in just a minute. But
Okay.
one of the things I wanted to mention before we got deeper into that is that we had several latter discussions on branding
Branding.
as a tool for leaders to be able to help communicate internally and externally the culture and the purpose and the structure and operational expectations of those organizations. And so that tool led us though to a discussion you and I were just having about where are we going? Where is the world of organizations and business in particular heading, particularly in 2025? One of the things that we've looked at is that in this discussion around the geopolitical environment of the world, we found that there's a vacuum, so to speak, of organizations that are building trust amongst the societies. And business has begun to move in that direction back from the time when the Business Roundtable and others, and then all the way through the recent economic summits at Davos and other places. They're talking about the role of business being able to help provide benefits, greater benefits to society, other than just financial profitability. And the other things that we've talked about, kind of related to this, is the economy will change as the innovation of generative AI and automation start taking more and more prominence in the way that businesses are delivering their goods and services in societies. So you and I had talked about what is going to happen in business and where is the business world and what should organizational leaders be thinking about and doing.
Yeah, well, one of the things that is key for leaders is to be including the conversation we're having right now in their planning and in their leadership development and in their management development, that they are incorporating considering the outside influences and looking ahead. And I mean, it's called scenario planning, but I'm not sure how many organizations really do that, where you really sit down and say, what if this occurs and this occurs and this occurs? And heard somebody just earlier today say, well, but you never know what's going to occur, so I don't know how valuable it is. But that's the whole value of scenario planning, is that you come up with 2 or 3 different scenarios, and then you're more prepared for the unknown because at least you've thought about it. And so so that's one piece of it. And then before we started too, what I appreciate about what you said is that is to be thinking about how does this organization want to like support society, support culture. I mean, what's the culture that's going to support the business? And then how does the business want to be with their coworkers, all employees, their customers, their strategic partners, so that together everybody is practicing living the culture that they really want for their business and other businesses to thrive. I used to use this motto a lot. I still do a lot when I'm doing training in organizations, but that people learn how to be citizens of the world in the organization, because that's where they spend most of their waking hours. So however they're treated, however they treat other people, that's what they're going to take it home and into their community. So is the organization mirroring the community, the world that they want, how they're treating each other? And so and I think it's just going to be key going forward for organizations to think, what's the role I want to be playing in our society, our culture, how we're living, and including the money we want to make, but included in that is the service to the community and their employees.
You know,
what
and
are
that,
your ideas about all that?
yeah, and that kind of gets us to where, you know, you and I were talking about what we want to move to in 2025, our discussions. We'll continue to talk about topics that, you know, that are that we've talked about similar to 2024, but a couple of areas that we want to think about, or a few that we want to think about moving into and finding some featured guests to talk about, is that one that you just mentioned is a key interest area for me, is anti-fragility, where you're looking at not just resiliency, where organizations have to rebound from the problems, but how do you absorb the impacts that are coming in the environment, or from the actual real environment, the meteorological environment, the social environment, and the government environment of which these organizations exist, and are serving. How then do we look at preparing an organization to not just be nimble, but actually able to be strong? And I think that those are topics that we can look for. And so maybe if you we'll look for some guests that might be able to talk in that area too. One of the other areas that we talked about is society in general, and this greater involvement of business, and being able to step up and take a more prominent role in society, to be able to be culture enhancers of society, not just simply reacting to the needs of stockholders or owners, but actually what is the purpose of the organization, and how does that purpose help the greater stakeholder communities of which they are there. And there's a couple of people in mind that I'm going to see if maybe we can get them to help talk to us about how leaders should look at a greater stakeholder world.
Oh, that's great.
And then one of the other things that, you know, we continue to go through is, what is the future now that we're looking at with AI and some of these other characteristics, some of the other business characteristics too. And the headlines are, now that the pandemic is over, more and more organizations are looking to bring back workers back to the office full time. And there's some resistance around that. So what do leaders need to do in order to ensure that their staff, their team members are fully engaged? And what decisions should they make around the in-house workforce versus a hybrid workforce versus a remote workforce? And is there a balance to be made, or should you make it all just back in-house again? What is the answer to that?
Great questions, and great, having a guest that can walk us through the questions, and then the what to consider about all those questions will be great. Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to another wonderful year of conversations. And Peggy, it's just been really great having you as our co-host, my partner in crime, and all of these discussions, and stirring up trouble and having all sorts of fun. So
same here, Kerry. I really enjoy being with you and the conversations and the guests, and yeah, whatever we stir up, I really enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, whatever, we hope that you continue to join in, and that you would invite your friends and colleagues to listen in and join in too, get benefit from it. Share with us what you think and some areas that you might like us to discuss. We'd be happy to consider those. But anything, Peggy, that you want to challenge our listeners and our audience to think about for 2025?
So it's really what I said a few minutes ago, but in a challenge way, is to be thinking about that is the culture. So the way we relate in the organization, how we treat each other, what it feels like, the mood in the organization, how we work together, how we communicate with each other. Like, are we being open and alive and passionate and and really listening and enjoying each other and appreciating each other, or whatever the exact versions of that are that suits the particular leader or manager in that organization, and it supports the like you said, the mission and the where the organization wants to go. And then, but also to ask, and is that the country I want to be living in?
Yeah.
Because we're actually creating the country we want to live in every conversation, every relationship, every action. So the place to start is what's in front of me right now. Are we working together in a way that I'd go, yeah, I'd love the whole country to be exactly like that. And if not, great. Then to start shifting whatever internally in the organization that needs to be shifted for you to go, yeah, I'd want to live in that country. And if every organization did that, then we probably would have a democracy and politics that are, well, we would. It'd have to mirror that. It would have to mirror that. So that's would be my challenge, would be to look at the organization that way, and then to start changing what would want to be changed to align with the country they want to be living in.
That's great. I like that challenge. So as we move forward into 2025, we wish you a great success, but more than just success individually, we wish you the energy and the influence and the drive to make a difference in the world. So as you continue to move through your new year, I would just want to say what I normally always say: let your light shine. Thanks for being a part of the Leadership Luminaries Lounge.
Thank you.
In the Leadership Luminaries Lounge, we sit and chat with Peggy and Kerry, where wisdom's at. They sprinkle insights like morning dew in this lounge where knowledge blooms anew. With every episode, they set the stage, sharing golden nuggets, turning life's next page. From boardroom tales to dreams out loud, they uplift a thought and make you proud. Oh, swing and sway with Peggy and Kerry in the lounge where visions are merry. Take a seat, let your worries retreat in the Luminaries Lounge where leaders meet.